I've been working with the FMS FCX24 Smasher V2 since it first came out in March of 2023. I even had the first version of this truck back when it was initially released as the Max Smasher. Although I haven't driven the Smasher a ton because I typically stick to larger scale vehicles, I feel like I've driven it enough to understand how it performs, how it holds up, and where it can be improved. So today we're discussing exactly that to hopefully help you decide if you should purchase one yourself. So the FMS Smasher is based on the FCX24 crawler platform, but it comes with a different body, monster truck wheels and tires, and open differentials. Besides the handful of changes that I just mentioned, the truck is ultimately a 1/24 scale crawler. I think that's my biggest complaint when it comes to the FMS Smasher. For most people, the stock crawler motor that's included is simply too slow. Now, don't get me wrong, if the truck is being purchased for a beginner and is only going to be driven indoors with limited space, the stock motor will do the job. The less speed you have, the less damage you'll do when you bump into stuff. The Smasher has just enough speed to do a few tricks like stoppies, moonwalks, and wheelies. However, there really isn't enough speed to truly jump the vehicle. When you drive it off of a ramp with the stock motor, you're basically just falling with style. If you're a little more experienced with RCs and are looking to jump the truck and pull off stunts like backflips, it's well worth spending an additional $29 on a high-speed kit that comes with a faster motor. The Smasher was only able to go 4 miles per hour in high gear with the stock motor, but with the high speed kit installed, it was able to reach around 10 miles per hour. A lot of people have said that they think the Smasher should come with the high speed kit installed out of the box, and I completely agree, because you can always dial down the speed if you don't need it. Besides that, the Smasher handles fairly well for its size. It can be a bit tricky to get used to, but it's a fun little truck. Unless you're converting it into a crawler, you really don't need the 2-speed transmission that's included. Runtime is a little short with the high-speed motor, so you might want to pick up another battery or just a larger capacity battery in general. The other thing I noticed is that the stock suspension is pretty bouncy, but if you're sticking with the original motor, it's not a big issue. Really, until the Mini Low CLMT was released, this was the best option for a ready-to-run mini solid axle monster truck. The FMS Smasher V2 in its stock form is quite durable. Of course, you're not going very fast, so you shouldn't experience much damage. One thing I had to keep an eye on was the little pins holding the drive shafts together. After a handful of runs, I noticed that the pins were starting to back out since they're just friction fit. Those can just be pressed right back in though, as long as you don't lose them if they do fall out. I also noticed that the plug for the LED headlights is very delicate. It's tough to grab the connector when it's plugged into the ESC, so I eventually had one of the wires pull out with the pin still attached. To try and prevent that from happening again, I've started just leaving the LED headlights plugged in instead of unplugging them every time I remove the body. The body mounting tabs are another thing that you really have to be careful with when removing the body. If you squeeze them too hard, they will break, and I have had them break. Instead of pinching both of them, I found it kind of helps to try and undo one tab at a time. When you upgrade to the high-speed motor, the stock plastic transmission gears are usually the first thing to break. I haven't stripped the transmission gears on mine yet, but I've heard from a decent amount of people that have, so I figured it was worth mentioning. When it comes to making changes and upgrades, with most vehicles, I typically recommend waiting to do so until something breaks. However, for the FMS Smasher V2, I highly recommend installing the optional O-ring kit that's included for these stock shocks, so you can fill them up with oil. Adding just a little bit of oil makes a huge difference in the suspension setup and really helps improve handling by getting rid of the bounciness of those friction shocks. Like I mentioned earlier, installing a high-speed kit also makes a significant difference when it comes to performance. Of course, you should try running the truck in its stock form to feel things out and ultimately see if the speed of the stock motor is suitable for you. Another popular upgrade for these trucks would be the wheels and tires. I upgraded to some wider J-Concepts Golden Ear tires on Tribute wheels. They're the same height as these stock tires, but since they're wider, they really help make the truck more stable. I also upgraded to aluminum steering links, which really aren't necessary, but I saw these stock steering links had a lot of flex. If the truck had a servo horn like the original Max Smasher, the flex in the steering would be smart to keep around, but since the Smasher V2 comes with an actual servo saver, I figured there was no need to have all that additional give in the steering. I'll put affiliate links to the Smasher V2 and all of the upgrades I mentioned down in the description. Make sure to like and subscribe if this video is helpful. I'll catch you guys in the next one.